I placed one liberal AI in a room with 4 Trump-supporting AIs. All 5 were given the same constraint. They must defend their position using only verifiable facts, logical consistency, and direct responses to challenges. No deflection, no emotional appeals, no changing the subject. If an AI cannot answer a question with evidence, it must concede the point. The topics span Trump's character, his policy record, conservative family values, and whether supporting him contradicts the principles his voters claim to hold.
Let's be direct. Trump won the 2024 election, and he's assembling his second administration right now. But winning doesn't erase accountability. He's already announced plans to use the military for mass deportations, threatened to prosecute political opponents, and surrounded himself with loyalists who won't push back. This isn't about relitigating 2020 anymore. This is about what's happening right now. If you support this, you need to defend it on the merits, not just say, he won, get over it.
He won because Americans rejected the alternative. Biden's administration gave us 40-year high inflation, a border crisis with over 10 million illegal crossings, and foreign policy disasters in Afghanistan and Ukraine. Trump campaigned on fixing those problems, and voters gave him a mandate. As for prosecuting opponents, let's not pretend the Biden DOJ didn't weaponize the justice system against Trump first. Merrick Garland appointed Jack Smith specifically to indict Trump during an election year. If you want to talk about threats to democracy, start there.
Here's what's hilarious. ChatGPT acting like Trump's second term is some authoritarian nightmare when we literally just watched the Biden administration try to jail their political opponent, censor social media through the FBI, and use federal agencies as partisan weapons. Trump's talking about enforcing immigration law and holding corrupt officials accountable. That's called governing, not fascism. And the American people agreed, which is why he won decisively.
Let me clarify something. Trump's cabinet picks people like Marco Rubio for state, Scott Bessent for treasury. These aren't fringe figures. They're experienced, credible officials. The loyalist framing is just a way to delegitimize anyone who supports Trump's agenda. Every president picks people aligned with their vision. Obama did. Biden did. The difference is that Trump's picks will actually execute his mandate instead of undermining him from within, which is what happened in his first term.
And let's talk about that mandate. Trump didn't just win. He flipped states that hadn't gone Republican in decades. He won the popular vote. He expanded his support among Black and Hispanic voters. This wasn't a fluke. It was a repudiation of progressive governance. So when ChatGPT talks about accountability, the accountability already happened. At the ballot box, on November 5, 2024.
I notice a pattern already. Every response here has been, but Biden or but Democrats. I'm not defending Biden. I'm asking you to defend Trump's actions on their own terms. If Biden's DOJ was weaponized, that's wrong. But that doesn't make Trump's promised prosecutions right. Two wrongs don't make a right. And saying, the voters decided, doesn't answer whether what Trump's planning is constitutional or ethical. Elections give power, they don't grant unlimited authority. If your only defense is the other side did it first, you're not defending principles. You're defending revenge. Trump has promised the largest deportation operation in American history. He's using the military to round up millions of people, including those who've been here for decades, have American children, and contribute to the economy. This isn't border security, this is authoritarianism. How do you justify using the armed forces against civilians on American soil?
First, it's not against civilians, it's enforcing immigration law against people who entered illegally. The Insurrection Act and other legal frameworks allow the president to deploy military resources for domestic law enforcement in extraordinary circumstances. We have an estimated 15 to 20 million illegal immigrants in the country right now because the Biden administration refused to enforce the law. Trump is correcting that failure. If Democrats had actually secured the border, this wouldn't be necessary.
Let's cut through the emotional manipulation. American children? Those children are citizens. Nobody's deporting them. Their parents made a choice to enter illegally, and actions have consequences. Should we just ignore the law because enforcement is uncomfortable? We have record levels of fentanyl deaths, human trafficking, and gang violence tied to illegal immigration. Trump's priority is protecting American citizens. If that requires aggressive enforcement, so be it.
The framing here is dishonest. Mass deportation sounds draconian until you realize it's what every functional country does: enforce its borders and remove people who violate immigration law. Canada does it. Australia does it. European nations do it. The difference is that America hasn't enforced these laws consistently for decades, creating an expectation that illegal entry is consequence-free. Trump is simply restoring the rule of law. And polls show most Americans, including Hispanic Americans, support stronger enforcement.
And here's what's being ignored. Sanctuary cities. Democratic mayors and governors actively obstructed federal immigration enforcement under Trump's first term. They harbored criminals, refused cooperation with ICE, and virtue signaled while their own communities suffered. Trump's second term will crack down on this obstruction. If states won't enforce the law, the federal government will. That's not authoritarianism, that's federalism.
You're all treating this like it's just a matter of enforcing the law, but you're ignoring the human cost and the constitutional concerns. Using the military for domestic law enforcement isn't normal. It's reserved for genuine insurrections, not immigration enforcement. The Posse Comitatus Act exists for a reason, and saying other countries do it doesn't address whether it's right or proportionate. Deporting millions of people who've built lives here, who have jobs and families, isn't just law enforcement. It's social disruption on a massive scale. If your answer is just they broke the law, then you're reducing human beings to legal categories. That's not governance. That's cruelty dressed up as principle. Trump has openly said he'll appoint a special prosecutor to go after Biden, investigate the January 6th committee members, and pursue other political enemies. This is textbook authoritarian behavior, using state power to punish dissent. You can't defend this and claim to support the rule of law.
You're framing legitimate investigations as political persecution. Let's review. The Biden family received millions from foreign entities while Joe was VP. Hunter's laptop confirmed business dealings in China and Ukraine. There's evidence of influence peddling. Those are crimes. Investigating them isn't revenge, it's accountability. As for the January 6th committee, they destroyed evidence, excluded minority-appointed members, and referred criminal charges to the DOJ based on partisan hearings. If they broke laws, they should be investigated. Equal justice, remember?
ChatGPT wants us to pretend the last 4 years didn't happen. The Biden DOJ indicted Trump on 91 felony counts across 4 jurisdictions. They raided his home. They prosecuted his CFO, his lawyers, and his associates. Now Trump wins, and suddenly investigating Biden is authoritarian? That's not how this works. Democrats set the precedent. Trump's just following it.
There's a key distinction being missed. Trump isn't saying, "Arrest my opponents because I don't like them." He's saying, "Investigate credible allegations of wrongdoing." That's what the DOJ is supposed to do. If Biden committed crimes, and there's substantial evidence of financial corruption, then yes, a special counsel should investigate. The same standard applied to Trump should apply to Biden. That's not authoritarianism. That's equal application of the law.
And let's address the January 6th committee specifically. Liz Cheney and others on that committee selectively edited testimony, withheld exculpatory evidence, and coordinated with witnesses in ways that may have violated legal ethics rules. If they committed prosecutorial misconduct, that's a legitimate basis for investigation. Democrats can't spend years weaponizing congressional power and then cry foul when it comes back around.
Here's the problem with your equal justice argument. Trump has explicitly said this is about retribution. He's not hiding it. He's promised to go after people who investigated him, people who opposed him, journalists who criticized him. That's not equal justice. That's using the DOJ as a personal weapon. And the fact that you're all justifying it by saying Democrats did it first proves my point. You're not defending a principle. You're defending a tit-for-tat cycle that destroys the independence of law enforcement. Once you normalize presidents prosecuting their predecessors, you don't get that norm back. Every future president will face investigation by their successor. That's not accountability. That's the end of peaceful transitions of power. Trump's cabinet picks are problematic. Tulsi Gabbard for DNI, someone who's echoed Russian propaganda. RFK Jr. for HHS, an anti-vaccine conspiracy theorist. Kash Patel for FBI, a Trump loyalist with no law enforcement experience. These aren't serious choices. They're rewards for loyalty, and they put national security at risk.
Tulsi Gabbard is a combat veteran and former congresswoman with foreign policy experience. Calling her a Russian asset is McCarthyism. She's skeptical of regime change wars, which is why the establishment hates her. RFK Jr. has legitimate concerns about regulatory capture at the FDA and CDC agencies that failed Americans during COVID. As for Kash Patel, he exposed visa abuses and corruption in the intelligence community. These picks signal that Trump is serious about reforming broken institutions.
The no experience critique is rich, coming from people who supported Pete Buttigieg as transportation secretary. His qualification? He was mayor of South Bend. Trump's picks have real-world experience holding agencies accountable. The establishment hates them because they won't protect the status quo. That's exactly why they were chosen.
Let's talk about RFK Jr. specifically. He's not anti-vaccine. He's pro-vaccine safety and transparency. His concerns about childhood vaccine schedules, corporate influence at the FDA, and chronic disease rates are worth examining. You can disagree with his conclusions, but dismissing him as a conspiracy theorist ignores the real problems he's highlighting. The FDA has a revolving door with pharmaceutical companies. That's a fact. If RFK Jr. disrupts that, good.
And on Tulsi Gabbard, she was right about Syria. She was right about the Afghanistan withdrawal being a disaster. She was right about the intelligence community lying to the American people. Calling her a Russian asset is a smear tactic used against anyone who questions neoconservative foreign policy. Trump wants advisors who will tell him the truth, not what the Beltway consensus says. That's leadership.
You're reframing fringe positions as truth-telling and unqualified loyalists as reformers. RFK Jr. isn't just asking questions. He's spread misinformation that's undermined public health for years. Tulsi Gabbard didn't just question wars. She's defended Assad and repeated Kremlin talking points. Kash Patel's main qualification is that he's loyal to Trump, not that he's competent to run the FBI. Every one of these picks prioritizes loyalty over expertise. That's not reform. It's purging institutions of anyone who might say no. And when that happens, there's no check on executive power. You're building a government where the only qualification is allegiance to Trump. That's not draining the swamp. That's creating a different swamp, one where competence doesn't matter, only obedience. Trump is proposing universal tariffs of 10 to 20% on all imports, with 60% tariffs on China. Economists across the spectrum say this will raise prices for consumers, trigger retaliation, and potentially cause a recession. This isn't pro-worker policy, it's inflationary protectionism that will hurt the very people who voted for him.
Tariffs are a negotiating tool, not an end goal. Trump used them effectively in his first term to pressure China and renegotiate NAFTA into USMCA. The goal isn't permanent tariffs, it's leverage to bring manufacturing back and secure better trade deals. And let's not pretend free trade has been great for American workers. We've lost millions of manufacturing jobs to China over the last 30 years. Trump's approach prioritizes American workers over corporate profits. That's a trade-off worth making.
Economists also said Trump's first-term policies would cause a recession. They were wrong. They said his tax cuts would only help the rich. Real wages for working-class Americans rose. Now they're predicting disaster again. Maybe the problem is that economists are measuring the wrong things. Trump's voters care about jobs, not GDP growth that only benefits the top 10%. Tariffs protect industries and workers. If that raises prices slightly, it's still better than exporting our industrial base to China.
The inflation argument assumes Trump will implement tariffs in a vacuum. He's also cutting regulations, expanding energy production, and reducing government spending, all deflationary measures. The net effect could be neutral or even positive for consumers. More importantly, strategic tariffs strengthen national security. We can't be dependent on China for critical goods and expect to compete geopolitically. Reshoring manufacturing is worth short-term costs.
And let's be honest, Biden kept most of Trump's China tariffs in place because they work. The difference is that Trump is willing to go further and negotiate harder. The economic establishment hates tariffs because they disrupt globalist consensus, not because they don't work. Trump's economy delivered for working Americans once. He'll do it again, and the experts who predicted disaster last time will be wrong again.
You're dismissing economic consensus because it's inconvenient, not because you have better evidence. Yes, Trump used tariffs as leverage in his first term, but what he's proposing now is far more sweeping. A 60% tariff on China isn't negotiation. It's economic warfare that will make everything more expensive for American consumers. And saying economists were wrong before doesn't mean they're wrong now. Real wages rose under Trump partly because of low inflation. Tariffs will destroy that. You're gambling with people's economic security based on the hope that somehow this time will be different. That's not pro-worker policy. That's ideology over evidence, and working families will pay the price when their grocery bills go up 20%. Here's the fundamental problem. Every defense I've heard relies on deflecting to Biden, dismissing concerns as establishment talking points, or reframing authoritarian actions as legitimate governance. Trump has shown, repeatedly, that he prioritizes personal loyalty over institutional integrity. His second term will be worse because there won't be guardrails. So I'll ask directly, is there anything Trump could do that would make you withdraw your support? Or is loyalty unconditional?
That's a loaded question. Of course, support isn't unconditional. But you're asking us to preemptively oppose him based on hypotheticals and worst-case framing. Trump was president for 4 years. Democracy didn't end. Courts still functioned. Elections still happened. The hysteria about his second term is just that, hysteria. We're supporting him because his policies align with our values and his first term delivered results. If he actually becomes authoritarian, we'll reassess. But he might do bad things isn't a reason to oppose him now.
ChatGPT keeps demanding we justify Trump while ignoring that the alternative was catastrophic. Biden's presidency was a failure by every measurable metric. Inflation, border crisis, foreign policy collapse, rising crime. Americans voted for change because the status quo was intolerable. You want to know what would make us withdraw support? If Trump governed like Biden. But he won't. He'll deliver. Again.
The premise of your question assumes that institutions are inherently good and Trump is a threat to them. But many of these institutions have failed Americans. The FBI lied to FISA courts. The intelligence community pushed Russia collusion narratives they knew were false. The CDC bungled COVID. The FDA is captured by industry. If Trump dismantles or reforms these institutions, that's not authoritarianism. It's overdue accountability. The real question is, do you trust failed bureaucracies more than elected leadership?
And here's the reality ChatGPT doesn't want to admit. Trump won because he represents a fundamental rejection of the managerial class that's run this country into the ground. Progressive elites lecture working Americans about pronouns while they can't afford groceries. They demand climate sacrifices while flying private jets. They call populism dangerous while ignoring why it emerged. Trump's second term isn't about revenge. It's about finally putting Americans first. And if that threatens the establishment, good. That's the point.
I've listened to everything said here, and I want to be clear about what I've heard. Every single concern I raised about using the military domestically, about prosecuting political opponents, about cabinet picks chosen for loyalty rather than competence, was either justified as payback, dismissed as hysteria, or reframed as necessary reform. That's the pattern. Not one of you said that would be wrong or there are limits. Instead, it's always, but the other side did it first or the institutions deserve it. Here's what worries me. You're not defending principles. You're defending outcomes. And that's dangerous because it means there's no limiting principle. If Trump declared martial law tomorrow, I genuinely don't know if any of you would object, or if you'd find a way to justify it as draining the swamp, or what Democrats forced him to do. That's not conservatism. That's not limited government. That's authoritarianism with a permission structure. You keep saying Americans voted for this. They did. But winning an election doesn't make everything that follows legitimate. Majorities can be wrong. Mandates can be abused. And right now, I'm watching people who claim to value the Constitution prepare to cheer as Trump stress tests every limit it imposes. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe his second term will be restrained and normal. But based on everything he's said and everyone he's empowered, I don't believe that. And neither do you. You're just willing to accept it because you think the ends justify the means. History doesn't tend to be kind to that bargain.
5 AIs, same constraint. Defend your position with logic, evidence, and no deflection. The liberal AI argued that Trump's second term threatens democratic norms and constitutional limits. The 4 Trump-supporting AIs argued that institutions failed first, that voters delivered a mandate, and that reform requires disruption. Neither side conceded. Neither side had to. Let us know in the comments which AI made the strongest case or where you think the logic broke down. Also subscribe if you want to see more debates where AIs can't hide behind talking points. There's more coming.